Hello and welcome to the Healing Insight podcast, episode 39, with me, Sarah Hunt.
And me, Jez Hunt.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. Hello, Jay. How are you today?
All very good up here in rainy, and it is rainy. It's been raining all day since last night. It was misty last night, and then hi Charlie. And yeah, so it's a bit of a damp weather day, but all bright and sunshiny here with me.
That's good news. Yeah, it's a bit of a damp weather day here as well. And Charlie Dog does not like going out in the rain, certainly not without a raincoat on, bless him. Okay, so today we thought we'd look at taking things at face value. So I think it's something that we all do an awful lot, and then we can find ourselves in pickles if we haven't kind of looked beyond what is being shown to us, because sometimes things aren't quite what they seem. Would you agree with that?
Oh, it sounds a bit Scooby-Doo-ish. Things aren't quite what they seem. Look below the mask. It's always the friendly character that's the evil villain. Um, those meddling kids. Yes, I. It can apply to everything though. So,
Yes,
for
absolutely.
example, it's a bit miserable and rainy here. So we could take that at face value and say, "Oh, it's miserable and rainy. I'm just going to stay in. I'm not going to go out." A bit like Charlie. I'm not going to go out today. But actually, we could then say, well, okay, it's raining, but I have a raincoat and I have an umbrella and I have wellies or walking boots or whatever, and I can put clothes on, or even if I get wet, I can dry off when I get home. So we can allow things at face value to put us off. I mean, it's not going to change the point that it's raining in this instance, but we can then choose how we respond to that. So it's looking deeper than maybe the first reaction or the first feeling that we get when something's presented to us, I guess is where I'm going with that.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And it's about listening to our intuition as well, because sometimes we kind of look at things and it might be a situation or it might be a relationship with somebody. And we kind of take everything as we see it. And we might, our intuition might be going, hold on a minute, hold on a minute. There's more to this than you realize. And I know that I've in the past, I know, and sometimes even now, I've not listened to my intuition, and then things have kind of unfolded in front of me, and I've realized that it's not the situation or the person's not quite how they've projected themselves to me, and that's a lesson in itself, in that, it's about listening to your intuition. It's about what feels right with this. Does this feel like truth that's being told to me or shown to me? Is it my truth? Does it sit well with me or does it not? Do I need to be wary? Do I need to investigate? Do I need to do research to understand what is being presented to me, and what the truth is relating to it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, we all have red flags. We all have things that we know instinctively at that intuition level. Some people might call it a gut feeling, and I know we've discussed the difference between gut and heart and intuition before. So listeners, go back and find that one. I can't remember which episode it is, to be fair.
I think it was one on intuition.
Well, there you go. That'll be the one on intuition then. But we get these red flags, and then for some reason we choose to ignore it. So we allow our head to take over, and well, that can't be the case. So, for example, I think this is something that many people may well be able to relate to in terms of relationships, and I've certainly been there before, where when you start in a relationship, everything's good. You're trying to impress each other, and so you're showing the best side of you. You're showing what you feel the other person wants to see, rather than being genuine and being, well, actually, I'm not feeling so good today, or this is how I am. Okay. And maybe rightly so in some cases if we've got lots of baggage that we're displaying, because we don't want to necessarily put someone off us because of the baggage we perceive that we're carrying. Okay. And the problem is then that we can then get into that situation of a relationship where we start to, we know and notice things that are happening, that are slipping through, or where the mask is slipping, if you like. If you think of it, of us wearing a mask to be that loving, kind person that we are or want to be seen as, the mask slips in certain situations, and then it starts to become more and more. And initially we turn a blind eye at it, but then we start to get to that point where we can't ignore it anymore. And it's not that there's, I understand the logic and the thinking and the feeling behind wanting to show the best side of you and not wanting people to see you as you perceive you are, bearing in mind that we generally are the worst critics and judges of ourselves than anyone
Mm.
else is ever going to be. But the problem is that's based on the beliefs and the values and the experience and the distortion that we've put on our life to say that we're not good enough. So we're trying to portray to somebody else that we're better than we feel we are.
Yeah.
So that's something we can't keep up, because the true nature of us will always come out. It has to.
Yes, and this is where we need to be really comfortable with ourselves and our authentic self, and allow ourselves to be ourselves, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because if you can be authentic, um, then people will take you as you are. If you can take you as you are, then everybody else can take you as you are. Does that make sense?
Yes, and yes, it does. I'd like to add to that a bit.
Mm.
If you can be authentic in yourself and you can be comfortable in yourself and put yourself out in the world to whomever as yourself, as I hopefully do every day, and I certainly intend to, and that's my intention. And if I do slip up and suddenly find myself being judgmental when I'm driving the car and someone cuts me up, then I do stop myself and just, come on, just relax, it's fine. But if we put ourselves through as authentic, it's down to the other person whether they agree with that, whether they resonate with that, whether they like that or not. So where I'm coming from, I guess, is particularly now I'm more doing business coaching and coaching, when I'm out in the world putting myself out there to be seen, to connect with potential clients or people that I can help or have a conversation with that might help them move forwards, even if they don't become a client. Then I'm putting myself out there as Jez Hunt, this is me. And actually, me now talking on this podcast, me now putting myself out there as a potential coach, me now actually in a coaching session, me with Robbie, me, my son, me with whoever, I'm the same me, and I'm being the same me as much as I possibly can. So
Yes.
if you met me, so I've had this happen where one of my coaching clients, I met them for the first time, because obviously I do a lot of stuff online, like we're doing these recordings. So I'd been coaching them for a while, and I met them for the first time online and just having a conversation in a social environment at a network meeting. And they said, but you're exactly the same as you are on screen. They were expecting me to be different because I was in a room full of people rather than one-on-one. So the first thing I guess I'm trying to say here is that if we can be authentic ourselves, it's down to the other person. It's their choice. It's their place to decide whether we resonate with them or they resonate with us, or not. So it's not about me putting myself out there trying to make everybody feel, oh, Jez is a really nice guy. I put myself out there as me. This is authentic me. If you like me, that's great. If you don't like me, that's great. Go and find people that you do resonate with and connect with, and be yourself with them,
Mm.
because none of us can be everything to everybody or anything to everybody. You know, there are always going to be people that get our backs up, that don't resonate with us, that we trigger, that they trigger. The triggers are great because we get learning from that. But
Yes.
that doesn't mean we have to stay around those types of people. If someone's constantly triggering you, you can still reflect on why the triggering's happening, what's being shown to you, what the lesson is for you to learn from that connection and those series of connections. That doesn't mean you then have to stay around that person, if that makes sense, because it's
Yes.
not just my side of it, it's their side of it as well.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And of course all of us perceive things differently because of the journey that we're on. And
Yeah.
and all of us, and if I think back, I know that I was a people pleaser. I would put on a facade for people in different circumstances. I know I did that in the past. When I was at work, I was Sarah the nurse. When I was at home, I was Sarah the mum. And we probably all do that to a certain extent. But now, like you, I want to be my authentic self all the time, so that everybody sees me, and the true me. And like you say, we're not all perfect all of the time, and we're not going to resonate with everybody all of the time. But that's okay, as long as we are being loving in the way that we look at situations and deal with situations. So it kind of comes back to, if we're being authentic ourselves, we're going to draw in people that are authentic. If we are putting on some kind of facade, then we're likely to draw in people that are putting on a facade,
Yeah, I can
because
see
of the
that.
way that we draw in people to help us to understand ourselves. Um, but I think sometimes as well, it's very easy just to take a situation or a person, and believe what we're told, because we don't want to believe that it could be anything other than what we're told. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so sometimes we don't kind of go looking beyond what is presented to us.
Yes. And it's often after a period of time when we see beyond what's presented to us. I
Yes.
think,
Yeah. Sometimes it can take some time, can't it, for us to actually see that actually things weren't quite as we thought they were. And I certainly had that. I can think of one job in particular where I had that, and I was presented with this, what looked like a really good package for me. It was a job in London, meant traveling, but it was easy enough for me to do. And the package was what I was looking for. And then I got into the role and started doing it, and I discovered things that just I hadn't been told about. And interestingly, the person that had offered me the job left within 6 months of 6 weeks rather of me joining the company, and that kind of made me question things even more. And it turned out that that wasn't the right role for me, and I ended up leaving that job. But it was presented in a way that was to attract
yeah,
someone into that role, rather than being honest about exactly what the role entailed. And it was actually very different to what I was expecting. It wasn't, I was told it was sales with a bit of marketing. Actually, it was marketing with a bit of sales. And I was a salesperson, not a marketeer.
yeah,
So it was completely the wrong role for me. And I wouldn't have taken it if I'd known that detail. But there's always something to learn, isn't there? And there was a reason for me ending up in that role, but even so, it took 2 or 3 months for it to unfold, and for me to see that actually it wasn't the role that I thought it was.
yeah. And we all do that to a degree. We all try and put we all sell ourselves all the time. And funny enough, it goes back to the dating thing I was sort of talking about earlier with relationships. With, you know, if you go out to if you, for all of us that have ever been out clubbing at some point, or to a pub or a bar with a group of, when we're single, when we're a group of same-sex friends, and we're going out looking for, just to talk to girls, to talk to, in my case, and we don't suddenly sit there and say, oh yeah, well, I've had this happen, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened in my life in the first conversation. So it's not about that, but it is about being authentic to ourselves. So It's not necessarily about hiding it, but it's also not about necessarily inappropriately saying it at the wrong time, and by the wrong not the right time rather than the wrong time. And what I mean by that is the distinction, I think, between facades and masks versus roles. Because you were saying, Sarah the mum, Sarah the nurse, Sarah the... We
Yeah.
all have roles. I'm one of my roles is a coach. One of my roles is a partner. One of my roles is a father. One of my, we all have roles that do need different ways of being to a degree. So, for example, the role I have with my partner, Sheralta, I'm not going to treat her and have a relationship with her that's the same with my son, because
Mm.
it's a completely different. So the stuff that's appropriate in a partnership relationship, the stuff that's appropriate as a father-son relationship,
Mm.
that doesn't mean that they're interchangeable. Or so to a degree we do have to modify certain things for appropriateness. That's not wrong. That is part of taking on that role and being in that role in that moment. When I'm talking about facades or masks, it's when we intentionally hide something because, or hide behind something because we have some underlying fear or belief or fear of judgment or belief around somebody not accepting us for us. And quite often the root of that is because we don't accept us for us. There's something,
Yes, I
like you
would
said,
agree with you.
there's something that we're not happy with in ourselves. So we judge ourselves, and we therefore project that other people will judge us for that thing. So if we don't show them that thing, they can't judge us for it. Yet, because it's part of our nature, because it's part of who we are, because we haven't yet addressed it, dealt with it, worked on it, healed it energetically, then it will always surface at some point. You can hold it down for a bit. It'd be like an
Yeah.
actor taking on a role, then at the end of that play, carrying on that role for the rest of their life. You can't do it.
Mm.
You can act for so long, and that can be years. I'm not saying it's only defined to a week or a couple of hours, or you can only act for so long, and at some point you will let your guard down. You can't keep it up. The true nature of you will come out.
Yes.
So for me, and again, just think about this being taking things at face value, then I do accept people at face value, in that if I met you for the first time and I didn't know you, then I would meet you with no judgment. I would meet you as you showed me you.
Yes.
Okay. As I got to know you, then I might start to notice things about you. Now, if you think about when being vulnerable, so when we have a fear of being, or many people have a fear of being vulnerable, but vulnerability is just exposing, it's like, to use the dog analogy, it's exposing your belly to potentially being ripped to pieces, for example, by a tiger or a lion or whatever. Then me being vulnerable is me actually being in a position of where I feel safe enough to share with you something that I feel very uncomfortable about. So as I get to know people, if I'm feeling comfortable and feel safe with that person, I'm more inclined to let something out about me which I would have felt vulnerable about. Whereas if I'm just meeting you for the first time, I'm less likely to, because I don't know you. I don't know whether it's safe to or not to, or what at that point. The trouble is that we can, because we withhold something at the beginning, it can then be very difficult to let that out later because we've held it back, and now we feel shame and guilt about not having shared that thing, whatever that thing is. So then we can then push it down. Oh, well, I'll just ignore it. I'll just forget about it. And yet then it will actually come up. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So
Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah. And then it can look as if you haven't been authentic when actually you have. It's just picking up on timing as to when it feels right, when you feel you know the person well enough to actually have that conversation, to feel that the trust is there,
yeah,
isn't it? It's not that you're trying to deceive anybody. It's just that you're looking for what feels the right moment to actually have that conversation.
yeah. And if you remember that everybody does what they do. This is one of the things we're taught in NLP training when I do my NLP training. Everybody does the best they can with the knowledge and experience they have. So we go on the basis that everybody is doing what they're doing with the best intention.
Yes.
Now, their intention might not agree with might not align with mine. So I might completely disagree with what they're doing, but in their mind, they're doing it with the best intention. Yeah. So that doesn't mean that there aren't people out there who deceive, intentionally deceive. But the intention behind the deceit doesn't is not necessarily about deceiving you or me. It might be more because they're deceiving themselves, that they're someone
Yeah.
different to who they are.
Yeah.
So someone who cons someone out of money, we get scams all the time nowadays, emails for scams and stuff. Then there is deceit there from day one. But it might be, and bear in mind, I have no idea because I haven't talked to any of these people, but it might be that they're so dissatisfied in their own life, the only way they found of feeling better about themselves is to intimidate somebody else.
Mm.
Or to feel that, they might have been brought up in a very competitive family or with friends or peer network where they had competitions of who could do better, and it ended up being this is an easy route for me to do better and be seen to be good in that network. So it might be part of belonging. It might be a sense of belonging for them, or a sense of community, even though it's wrong from a moral point of view for many people.
Mm.
But that doesn't mean that it's wrong for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And this kind of comes to what I would term as levels of consciousness. And that to me is kind of where you're at on your journey. So what is right and wrong for one person may be very different to what is right and wrong for somebody else. So their morals will be different. And that there's a lot of things that can be in play with that. So, it can be linked to the way the person's been brought up. It can be linked to the area that they lived in. That it can be linked to um, the way that they were treated at school, in work. There's so many different things that
Yeah.
can affect that, and we're all at different parts of our journey, and all, as you say, absolutely doing the best we can with the knowledge that we have. And if you don't have knowledge about something that someone else considers to not be a good thing to be doing, but if you don't have the knowledge about that, then you're not going to have the understanding that maybe that's not the best thing to be doing or the best way to be behaving, because you haven't got that knowledge. So and it's very quick. We can be very quick as humans to be judging people for something like that, rather than recognizing that actually maybe they don't have the knowledge that they need because of where they are on their journey.
Yeah, I think there's two things that are quite important with that. And the thing that you said earlier is this truth for you? And I think there's a distinction between truth and your truth, or what's true for you.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
what is true? If we both agree on something and we both feel it's correct, then that's truth for both of us. But someone else might come along with an opposing viewpoint, and for them, it's complete lies, it's complete rubbish. And they have a
Mm.
different viewpoint, which is their truth. But which one is actually true? Is it our one? Is it their one? For each of the individuals in concerned, the truth is what they believe.
Yeah.
And we change our truth, we change what we feel, what we believe, what we know through investigating, through being shown alternatives, be it through looking at other possibilities that might be true, and then settling on what we now feel to be truth with this new awareness, this new information, this new experience that we have around us, that we can now reassess what we believed to be true. And now, does that still align, or are we shifting our view? And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
That's,
because it's part of the journey, isn't it? What was my truth 6 months ago, it's not my truth now. And that's okay. And that's because I've learned things, I've developed, I've progressed. And so I have a different perspective on things. And it's the same for everybody. You know, what was our truth a year ago, 6 years ago, six
yeah,
months ago will not be our truth now, because we've continued on our journey, and we're learning things all of the time, even if we're not consciously aware that we are learning lots of different things, because we all are all of the time.
yeah,
Um but even if we don't have that conscious awareness that we're learning, we if we look back, we can see what we believed to be our truth a couple of years ago, and perhaps look at that and think, no, I don't actually agree with that anymore. And that's just because of the way that things have changed, the experiences you've had, and so your reference points have changed, and so your perception has changed, and your viewpoint has changed. And that's all part of growing and moving forward on this journey of self-discovery.
yeah. I think the other thing to bear in mind is that, we live in a world of duality. Up, down, left, right, backwards, forwards, whatever. There's always an opposite. And the truth that we have, so whatever we believe to be true, there will always be someone that will argue the opposite. Somewhere on this planet, there'll be somebody, probably many, but who will argue the opposite side. Think about debates. When we used to debate training at school,
School, yeah.
we had to, even if you didn't believe it, well, that's what you're going to debate, and that's what you're going to put your point across on. Whether you believe it or not, that's what you're going to focus on. So you can argue anything to be true if you really want to and put the effort in. So when it comes to taking things at face value, then what I would, or the way I try and look at it, and what I would invite people to do is, firstly, okay, this is what I'm seeing. It's neither good nor bad. It just is. This is what this person's. So if we're talking about people, this is what the person's displaying to me. So I have no reason at this point to doubt them.
Yeah.
However, knowing what I know about people putting on masks, because I've done it myself, as well as, generally we do, then just be aware that what we're seeing in front of us might not be their default nature, or might not be the default scenario. It might be that they're doing this because they've got a role on, they've got a hat on of a role that they're playing. So if it was in business environment, for example, and we're going for an interview, the interviewer might or might not be like that because they might have an interviewer hat on, and they might be all formal, and yet when you meet them after the interview, they're all laughy, jokey, or whatever. So, but it's just being aware that there is the possibility that they're not who they seem to be. But, and I will use but in this case, but remember that just because we live in a world of duality, and that there are these possibilities, doesn't mean that that's what they're doing. So it's
Yes.
being aware, so that you're not walking into something blinkered and with your eyes shut, but also not going out of your way to try and find a problem with that person, because you will find a problem, because if anything else, you'll create and twist and warp something to suit
Yeah.
your narrative that person's not being honest. So it's a
Yeah.
balance.
Which then would make me say, do you need to look at whether you're being honest? Because
Yeah.
because if you're doing that, then are you actually being honest with yourself? And it would come back to that with me. It would be like, we need to be kind of looking at, are you being honest with yourself? Because if you feel that someone's being dishonest with you, then maybe you need to look at you and your ability to be honest with yourself. And sometimes it's very difficult to be honest with ourselves.
No, like I said, we're our own worst critic.
Yes,
We
definitely.
we judge ourselves negatively more than anyone else ever will.
Yeah.
You know.
Charlie's been very vocal today.
Oh, bless him. Well, he wants to join in.
Obviously he does. So yeah, I think it's important that to understand that we do need to take things at face value to start with, so that we're looking at things without judgment. And that's really important when you're in your heart, when you're allowing yourself to be heart led, to be led by your gut feeling and your intuition, then taking things at face value is important. But then because then you're not placing judgment in the way, but then it's allowing things to unfold in front of you for you to then be able to see the fuller picture, and whether it's something that you want to be part of or not.
Yeah, because as we've said before, we have choices.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can choose to continue with that situation or that relationship, or we can choose not to continue with it, and that's okay, because it'll be what feels right for us.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, so I think that's about that with that topic for today. I think it's been a very interesting look at things. So thank you very much, Jay, for your time.
It's okay.
It's been
Thank
good
you.
to catch up, and
See
we
you next
will see
time.
you again soon. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.